actions.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit. What happened to the home of the brave? These motherfuckers, they're controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us fight and be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, heading the clouds, and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government released.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is TopLobsta, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, I would like to remind all of our live viewers that this is a 30-minute preview only. Sometime around the 30-minute mark, we'll be going live exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad, where you can continue listening along for free. You can either sign up for free or sign up for the $5 tier and enjoy 7 days of free content. Before your charge, you could enjoy ad-free viewing experiences, gaining early access to episodes before the general public, plus discount codes off of merchandise at TopLobsta.com. All that and more awaits you on patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. Today, joining us once again is William Ramsey. For those of you who might not be familiar with the last episode, William, can you fill them in on where they can find your work and what it is that you focus on?
Yeah, I have a podcast titled William Ramsey Investigates. I would say I'm just kind of a newer version of an investigative journalist. So my podcast is in the top 0.5% in the world. I have 5 books that you can find on Amazon or my website, which is showing now. And then I have 5 documentaries on Crowley and Smiley Face Killers and Occult Hollywood on my Patreon, which you can just watch. It's $5 a month. You can watch those at your leisure if you're interested. But yeah, but I do a wide variety of different topics and subjects. So it's hard to pinpoint it.
I was scoping through your feed recently. We do a show with Clint Russell, and I was like, you know who probably has good information on this? William Ramsey. And I went and I looked, and I was like, of course he's got good information. It was something about the cartels and their association with America and things like that, back to Narcos. And I'm like, just scrolling through, I was like, there it is. It's like an encyclopedia of conspiracy, if I may.
An encyclopedia
of
stuff that'll put you on a list.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah, no question about it. But I think that it's kind of, I tried to make my content evergreen so that people like you can go back and look at it, whether I'm talking about Kubrick or Rosemary's Baby or the cartels or the West Memphis 3. So I think that they're still relevant, and they're kind of little timestamps of my research at any given time.
Yeah, it's amazing how not only are they relevant, but some might even be more relevant today than they were when you probably recorded it. So definitely it's a resource. If you're a conspiracy theorist, I would use your podcast as like a major resource to figure out like a little roadmap of where we're going.
It's interesting you say that, because even this topic that we're going to talk about today, the Catcher in the Rye, has changed since I first started researching it, which was another timestamp of April 2024, where I had a dispute with a guy online about Catcher in the Rye and Mark David Chapman. And he had said, there's not that much of a relationship between Catcher in the Rye and him. And I'm like, no. So I went and did a show in 2024, Catchers in the Rye, where I kind of went in detail, which is kind of the basis of this presentation. But in that time frame, you had all these strange people, crooks in Butler, Pennsylvania, Ruth, a very strange person, very much out of the kind of same playbook as Mark David Chapman from Hawaii, literally a stone's throw from where Chapman supposedly, quote, worked, unquote, and traveling around the world with like suspicious, how are you getting all this money for airfare? So that's another guy. Ruth pops up. This is still current. Like they're still talking about it, like what's going on with it, like Trump's trying to get information from the Secret Service. And then Mangione, right, in New York City. This Mangione who shot the a healthcare CEO at 7 a.m. in the morning. Like, how did he know where he was at any given time, which is a real question. But Mangione's another interesting character with the Hawaii ties. So I'm just kind of back bolstering what you just said. Like, some of these things take different permutations over time as more information or new things happen.
Don't tell me that Mangione was reading this book.
Well, Mangione was in New York City, and literally they found his belongings in Central Park. That ties in. It's a very strange tie. Like, if people don't know the narrative of Catcher in the Rye, it's about a young man named Holden Caulfield who gets kicked out of his fourth, school, prep school. It's fake. Pensie's fake, doesn't exist. But he's going back to New York City to his family, and it's kind of like his adventures in New York City. Mangione's in New York City. The end of Catcher in the Rye takes place, and you'll see that on the cover. This one cover that I have. It's the carousel, and apparently Mangione's belongings were found at the carousel in Central Park.
That's right. That's a strange. I don't like the word.
He's got all the indicators of somebody who went through a very severe, serious personality change. If you look through the background of Mangione, he was like the head of his class at a prep school. So you see these weird overties, and how we'll get into this. This is if you're psychologically maybe a little frail today or something, like, this is not the show for you, because we're going to go into some places that are real, and it's probably perfect. Like your intro, people being hypnotized. This is the theme of what I'm gonna relate to you, which is these kind of overlapping things. And I've said on other shows, the real Rosetta Stone for the 20th century is hypnotization. It really is. It's unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it, but so many events and so much TV and repetitive phrases and all these things people are being exposed to goes all the way back, really almost to like the turn of the century with Rasputin used hypnotization. He knew how to go into deeper states of consciousness. That his involvement influenced the Romanov downfall and the fall of Nicholas II, like the kind of incompetence and like frail, feeble response to a lot of things. So that whole, the Russian Revolution was just bloody as all that. Hitler knew hypnotization, Hanussen, and all these other magicians. And
it's been brought to my attention that that Hitler had a real fascination with hypnotism, and I think Mengele was doing quite a bit of research in people with central heterochromia, which is this idea that there's a second ring of color within your eye. I don't know what he suspected of it. People suspect that it was something that the Gates program, that MK Ultra, and that the Nazis were looking for, or that at least Mengele was looking for. I don't know too much about it. I just know that he allegedly was injecting dumps of adrenaline into the eyes of his victims to see how the adrenaline played with that disposition of central heterochromia. But we just did an episode where, we're talking all about Kubrick and certainly this like hypnotic aspect that so many people who are in that industry, who look to Kubrick as the example, then set out and try to accomplish themselves. And that is like telling a story behind the story. And not telling it to the conscious mind, but telling it to the unconscious mind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the potency and power of film, really, is that you're in a kind of a environment without external stimuli, and something's coming at you, and they can do some pretty incredible stuff. But Kubrick probably knew a lot about that. I'm sure he did. I know he did, because he put it in his films.
So how do we want to start then, William, with this idea of Catcher in the Rye and how it seemingly connects all these events that are taking place in not only real time, but in our own history as a country?
Can we start at like what the book, because I know that I've read it, but I forgot everything in junior high school. So that alone is MK Ultra, right? It's like we were given this shit in junior high school to read, and then like nobody really could. Some people do remember it, but most people are like, I don't know, I cheated on it. I used some website to give me Cliff Notes, and
I don't remember it at all. None of it.
I remember it being there, but I remember reading it and going, I don't really understand. This is just kind of like a kid going through trouble. Like I couldn't comprehend it. I did another rereading at my age 56 after reading a lot about MK Ultra and a lot of this kind of secrets, secret knowledge of the U.S. government. And this book is a shock to me as reading it as an adult. I'm in shock that it's even given to children. And the reason why it's there is another thing. It was originally published in 1951. The author is J.D. Salinger, who is an intel, like this, his history is all very well confirmed. He was an intel guy in the military in World War II. He was in one of the landings at Normandy. And his job, once he got into France, was to ferret out kind of intel officers. And so he was directly involved in kind of like solving all these problems in France, right? Where the Nazis were and people were getting killed. So he actually ended up in a mental institution. And they called it back then, they didn't call it PTSD. They called it shell shock or like something military shock. He was involved in the Battle of the Bulge, if you remember that. So Salinger is writing it. Apparently, I was told that he had parts of this book when he was in World War II. And then this gets published in 1951. And this is really the beginnings of the Cold War, right? So this is a time when this publication takes place. And since it's been published, this book has sold, this is confirmed, 60 million copies worldwide. So it's an incredible peak of literature. And a lot of people view this as Holden Caulfield is almost kind of like an anti-hero. Like he's a somebody to be emulated. Like you can identify with him. And that's the way it's sold, as this alienated young 16-year-old kid.
Has this book been banned from public schools? I think that was recent.
Yes, there was a dispute when it was first published that it shouldn't be in the school. So there was kind of like a moral outrage, and it's justified because there's almost every kind of dirty theme is involved in this book in the language of the 50s. So like today now with what's going on, this book pales in comparison to like what's going on today. But back at that time, this was like there's like pedophilia, the professors hitting on him. But Holden Caulfield, a call, for people who don't know, call, C-A-U-L, is usually when a baby is birthed. If there's a call, it's like a piece of the placenta over the face. It was considered a sign of a blessing, and that the child would be either special or have second sight or something like that. So that's the use of the name. And I think all of the names that are used in the book are for reference. They're not mistake. They're not like random names. So Holden Caulfield, hold on to your call. And the field references the Catcher in the Rye, right? So the rye is the rye field. So there's a very deep attachment psychologically between the character and this concept that goes through the book, this notion of the rye, which is actually a misreading of Robert Burns. He's a famous UK or British, actually, I think he's Scottish, poet. And it's a misreading of, I think, going through the rye. So what you see about Holden is that he's misinterpreting things outside. And there's very profound psychological things going on with him. He ends up in a mental institution, by the way. The last chapter, 26, is him in a mental institution with his brother. I don't know where his sister is, Phoebe, or his parents. So we kind of see his mother, but his dad is kind of a distant figure. It's almost kind of like the Disney movies where the dad isn't even involved in anything, with the kids. Like, so there's no parental thing, and the mother comes and goes. She's seen as kind of a nervous Nelly. But his sister is really kind of his idea. He really loves his sister. And there's a very disturbing to me, disturbing things about his sister who's 10. And he like touches her inappropriately. They dance together, kind of like somebody who's more romantic than a sister, like 4 dances together. So this is at the end of the book. And then she wants to run away with him. So that's kind of basically, and it's kind of they call it a Bildungsroman, is kind of like the literary term of a coming of age book. So there's an element to that in this, or a suggestion that it is a coming of age, even though he's not really, it's not over time. It's just, it takes place over 3 or 4 days. But the reference to David Copperfield, which is Dickens, really is a Bildungsroman. It starts out at the beginning. So Holden is actually very smart. He aces his English classes, but fails everything else. And he's kind of a bungler too. Like he was supposed to go. I think it was the lacrosse club. Like he left his all of the material for his sports team, and he forgot it somewhere. So he like that's how it starts off, and then he's getting kicked out of school. But there's very like strange things that repetitive statements, which we'll see kind of later with some of these MK Ultra assassins do the same thing that he's doing in this book. So he repeats phrases over and over. In the very beginning of the book, you will, you will, you will. He also wears this red hat, which we'll see in the slides, which I think at first glance is just a standard kind of weird hat, but he calls it the human hunting hat. And he puts it on, so he like walks around with this human hunting hat. And he does one of the famous lines of the book is, "Where do the ducks go in Central Park?" He doesn't know. He doesn't understand that when the winter comes, the ducks will fly south, right? To go somewhere. He really is asking people through the book. So you'll see this kind of visualization in this. He's also in the care of a psychoanalyst, which is kind of timely, I guess, for that time. Maybe it was more rare back then. But he does things without acknowledging it. So you'll see the narrative. There's very kind of clever literary things where he has past tense. The author's mixing tenses of present and past very casually, and he also Holden does things he doesn't know what he's doing. So he does violent things, breaks windows. I didn't know what I was doing. They repeat this word madman. He thinks of himself as a madman. Like I think it's probably 20 times in the book. So it's this suggestion that he isn't well, and he's not well. Like this is not like a guy going through problems. This is a guy who is, I think the real word would be schizophrenic. He doesn't attach to the external world like other people do. So he's
How
operating.
old is he supposed to be in this book?
Pardon me?
How old is he in this book?
16.
16.
He depersonalizes everybody else. So he's very negative. So everybody's a phony and all this other stuff. Like everything's fake. And I guess at a cursory topical reading, that's kind of okay, cool. That's the way people feel about humanity or whatever at that age. But it's something more profound where he's like, these are just other people. These are not like, he doesn't assess their personality as real beings. And he kind of like passes through these different phases. It's very strange. There are words like split brain, trance in this book. Like this is how sophisticated these kids are being exposed to these ideas. And you'll see this trance concept in Chapman for sure, and Hinckley, that they're both, something's going on that isn't, these people are not in present tense. Hinckley's not, and Chapman too. And that's kind of like how this book, and it just goes on. The book is full of perversion. So like the kid's going through this whole thing for 3 days, but he sees transvestites, gays, pedophilia. His Antolini is trying to hit on him, puts his hand on his head while he's sleeping on the couch. And he says that this has happened to him 20 times, 10 or 20 times, these kind of uncomfortable things, which it's very weird too, because he gets himself into the circumstance. Like instead of like avoiding the pedo teacher, he like calls him up and says, "I'm coming over to talk." And the teacher is like, "Holden, you're a very, very strange boy." And Holden goes, "I know." So these, like, if you're identifying with Holden, and it does, like, there's a very strange thing at the very last chapter where he goes back and breaks the fourth wall. So he starts talking to the reader and he says, "I don't know why I'm telling this to you, but I am, because I think in the mental institution. I don't know why I'm telling this to you, but I am. I don't know what it means." He doesn't derive meaning from his experiences, whether good or bad. So like if you and I have a good experience, oh, that was a lot of fun. Or a bad experience, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to get stuck in New York for 3 days and sleep on benches. He doesn't have these things. But anyway, so there's sadism, masochism. He's crazy. He's suicidal. It's just, and this thing, I swear to God, I'm a madman. He's also anti-Christian. So there's an element here of that. You have to remember, this is the 50s. This is post-World War II, where it's very by today's standards extremely conservative. There's no women's rights or anything. Christian, still a Christian white country. He says his sympathies when he reads the Bible, it's not with Christ. He thinks the apostles are fake, right? He thinks there's something fake about them, but he also identifies with Legion. So if you remember the part of the Bible where Christ is in the wilderness and there's a guy who cannot be restrained. He's crazy. He has these demons, and Christ, he's talking to the demons. He says, "You can go out. Let us go out. We are Legion." And Christ exorcises these demons into a herd of pigs, and the pigs run and drown themselves. That's who Holden Caulfield identifies. So this whole notion, a lot of these analysts, a lot of these literary critics, they pass over a lot of these elements in their criticism because I've read them now. Like I've been reading them. They're like, oh, Holden's just a cute, disaffected kid. No, there's something else really much more profound, especially with these psychological states that are in there.
It almost seems like you would diagnose him as schizophrenic if you were
Yeah.
to take like a modern day medical industry angle at it. This book is being aimed, I was reading it, it's predominantly high school, right? As early as ninth grade. So 14 years old is the age of a ninth grader. And I wonder then, is there a sort of a moral reckoning that the character goes through? Because I don't know. It's hard to remember how I was at 14 and whether or not I should have been exposed to these themes. And
that's what I'm saying. At the end,
there was a moral wrap up.
There isn't. He breaks at the end of the book. There's a very short chapter where he's in the mental institution. He says, he breaks the fourth wall. He's now talking to the person who's read the book and been inside his head, his screwed up, jumbled head. And he goes, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And I don't even know what this means. So there's no, like at the end of like a Hallmark card, movie or something, right? There's a wrap up where everything comes together and all the conflicts resolved and everybody goes, this is a nihilistic book. It doesn't have that.
So what about it is so profound that they've seen fit to, because everybody's familiar with this book, peripherally or otherwise, because they were made to read it in school. Where then is the value within this? It's like when you look at Lord of the Flies, which is a big one, or you kind of look at that and it's like a deep study into the nature of human beings, and that you could even see it emulated in children if you isolate them and put them in charge of one another. There is something to be gleaned, some insight. What then is there for the Catcher in the Rye for students to glean?
That they're being subjected to cultural creation, a cultural influence that's not positive. That this is not a kind of like a book that somebody would read to have a positive outcome. So it's something to me, especially when you look at all of these assassins who are associated with this. This to me is a kind of plant, and I've done some work on the CIA and like, where does this book really come from? How does a book with this many sophisticated psychological traits in it get created, written, and put out to the public where 60 million books have been sold? That is a mystery, because if you really read this with a critical eye, like I've tried to do, it shouldn't be I can see why people didn't want it in the hands of children, because it doesn't have an outcome. Like I had a crazy period, and then at the end I was healed. And I became a born again Christian, or I joined a monastery, and everything was resolved. It's not resolved. He goes through all these. He's going to commit suicide. He has a human hunting hat. I could just shoot somebody. He's a chain smoker. He's a pyromaniac.
Would you say that the character throughout the book, that would his traits resonate with other 16-year-old boys?
Yeah, but not in a good way. Like I think
what
that's
I'm
my
getting
takeaway.
at. So it's like, so they would make you empathize rather with this character, and you would see yourself in them to some degree. And then when you get to the moment where you would then get some answers, well, how does this character go about dealing with the things that also plague me? Well, there is no conflict resolution. It's just,
exactly.
Doesn't this suck?
Yes. When I say nihilism, I mean it. He also is a liar. He lies all the time. He says he can lie to people for hours. He runs into the mother of one of his schoolmates on the train and just balonies her, uses a fake name, tells these fake stories about him, how great her son is. Like he's just completely baloneying her and laughing about it in his internal dialogue. So I would say that's not a positive character trait. He's also says he's a sex maniac, but he's actually sexually frustrated. So they create a character who is not, he doesn't have any redeeming, there's nothing redeeming qualities about him. So he's not an athlete, he's not a thespian, he's not an intellectual, successful academic. These are all things that aren't there.
It's
So he's
strange
just
then that these books would be, or this book would sell as many copies, because that sort of storytelling doesn't resonate with the average person. It leaves them frustrated and without a conclusion. And people like typically, and I don't know for better or worse, but to have a concise wrap up is to put an end on it, to put a bow on it, is what people want. And and you can kind of tell right on its face that that is the nature of this book because of what you've said. How many killers this book resonates with, because you can kind of see that train of thought, right? You go,
Right,
look at this guy. He's just like me. And what does he do about it? Nothing. It's all nihilism. There's nothing good in the end. There's no wrap up. There's no morality. So fuck it. What am I doing here? Why don't I go and just do this thing that I've been planning to do? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you can see how that character resonates. But for the population at large, I don't think people really like that, or else we would get more of that from Hollywood.
It gets really disturbing. There's a disturbing aspect to it. The Red and his sister, and the fact that the last chapter does not have his sister and does not have his dad is very odd. Like, I'm not saying you could read in that he did something bad to his sister, but she's not there. She's not mentioned. Just the brother. So what's going on? Like, you can read into a lot of weird stuff in there. So that lack of resolution and the lack of things with his sister, this kind of like weird thing. So, and like you said, the lack of resolution. So his sex life, he's not like he's like somebody who lives through other people's romantic lives. So he's living through Stratlater, this other character he knows, and this girl that he's obsessed with who he never calls. So he has this kind of like infatuation with somebody that he will never relate to. Then he goes to this hotel, and the bellman in the elevator, who's, I think, Manuel, hooks him up with a prostitute. And so the prostitute comes for $5, but he doesn't complete the act. But he says he's a sex maniac. So you can see this kind of internal tension within the character itself. So he's not like he's not successful, with the other sex. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is fascinating from Arcane Arsenals. He says, seems like the sales went to schools like Mac computers. And if that is truly the answer there on how a book that doesn't seem to resonate with the average person gets to 60 million sales, is because the public school system is buying it in droves and indoctrinating children with it.
Well, this is like
Yes.
CNN in airports, right? Or Disney Plus subscriptions with the USAID. That's 700,000 of them that are just paid for by taxpayer funds for whatever reason to make Buzz Lightyear gay or something like that. And
it's interesting because in this book are these ideas. This guy Luce, he runs into Luce at a bar. Luce kind of is a direct reference to the Luce family who ran Time magazine, right? So Henry Luce and his wife, they have an interesting story themselves, but Time Life eventually bought the Zapruder film, right, and hid it from the public. But this is 1951. Luce is a kind of sexologist. Holden knows, like, he likes Luce because Luce is super knowledgeable about sex. So he's asking him questions and Luce is giving him information. But one of the things Luce says is like half of married men are gay. And that's another thing that came out of the Rockefeller supported Kinsey Institute, was this whole notion that heterosexual men it's much more normal to have gay relationships. That was the push. It's fake. All of Kinsey's research cannot be duplicated. But you see that suggestion within this book. So it's like this book, something sinister is here. And I think that these guys have keyed into it. Hinckley and whatever, through it. If not, we can get there. Through hypnosis, you can see why somebody would use this to influence somebody's mind. Like, in a deeper way. And the twist of this at the very end, where he breaks the fourth wall and talks to you, it's like you've been in his mind. So it's very powerful. So in other narratives of book narratives, you're clearly in like looking down at these characters interplay, war and peace, and all these sophisticated or complex interrelations between adults and children, and political acts. But this is different. You're in his brain, and then he's talking to you, so it's much more intimate. But this isn't an internal dialogue like Proust or something that's positive. This is like a scramble-brained guy, and you can hear when he's talking to his sister, he's having a conversation, and then for 3 paragraphs he's talking about he's thinking about his buddies back then. So he's not even in the present tense with his sister.
It's insane.
You have to read this. It's totally crazy. If people have like understand kind of mental states and kind of like how schismogenesis or like how people can be messed with in cults, like this book you'll find it very disturbing. Like it's really off the charts. Suicidal. Yeah, really. Oh, he's fascinated and scared by blood. He uses this word, get the axe, chew the fat. So these kind of very powerful, once a rat, always a rat. I have a brain tumor. He's, what is it when you think you're old? He's a hypochondriac. Like there's not you go through, find a redeeming quality. Like maybe to like the anti people, this guy's great because he's always like in a terrible state. And he has weird responses to things that make him depressed and happy. They're not the standard things that make like a nice meal or time with friends or watching a movie or sports game. He gets depressed by when he sees cheap luggage, he gets really depressed, like because he's rich. He goes to Brooks Brothers, he's well dressed, he has tons of money. He doesn't seem to hurt for money until the very end, but he gets depressed by other people's cheap luggage, which also brings to mind kind of this character of American Psycho, where he's totally obsessed with external, trappings of status or whatever, his clothing and his wear and his business card.
True in what we see, where it's like a lot of the time these people that are committing atrocious acts come from well-to-do backgrounds. They have money. It's what's given rise to this idea that if you have it all and you raise a child, something about that child is unfulfilled and it turns to, some psychopathic tendencies. I have a really important question that I got to get off my chest, which is what the hell does it mean to be a catcher in the rye? But before we answer that, I'd like everybody that is watching to know that we are cutting the stream to YouTube, Rumble, and elsewhere, and we're going live exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. But fear not, you can continue watching along, enjoying an ad-free viewing experience, and gaining access to the episode before anybody else, and you can do so for free. You can sign up for the free tier, or you can sign up for the $5 tier and get a 7-day free preview of our content before billing begins. So otherwise, give it a couple days. The episode will drop for free in its entirety everywhere else. All right. Bye, guys. So William, what in the hell is a catcher in the rye?
So it's based, like I mentioned earlier, Robert Burns did had a poem, right, that the sister knows very well. Phoebe knows very well. And it's called something in the rye. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but it's the catcher in the rye is Holden's misreading. This is another example of how he misinterprets reality, but it's a misreading of this Robert Burns poem that goes, if a body catch a body coming through the rye. And it's kind of like a erotic story. Well, it might involve rape, but it's about a man and a woman in the rye, and it's supposedly an old Gaelic or Scottish, and he interprets it as a catcher. And there's a very famous sequence at the very end, which you can go through in the slides, where he envisions himself. And this is kind of like the weird thing about his attachment to children. He envisions himself as a guy who's going to be in the rye helping kids who are running towards a cliff and saving them from going over the cliff. So he will be the catcher in the rye. But it also has kind of a darker element to it when you kind of see like this human hunting hat that was in some of the book covers. This is darker. Catcher is also a Sith. So you see the sickle and the hammer of communism. That Sith goes through the rye and cuts it off. So there is a kind of a subtextual aspect of violence to the title of the book itself.
It is almost like a Jesus complex as well. Like he feels like he's the one to save these kids, but you can't really even get your own thoughts together.
Right. No, it is interesting. And there's a very interesting statement at the very end that's by his guy Antolini, who is his kind of guy who's trying to hit on him. He says something to him like, there's something about you that says you'll die. You'll have a death that is not good for something, a valiant cause or something. Like, it's really weird. Like, these are really weird statements in there. It's not, well, the more I read it, the more I think the narrative is fake. It's just the narrative is there to get to import these concepts into the reader.
That's a fantastic way to put it, William, because that is what, when we're talking about Kubrick films in this last episode that we did, it seems that, and very many directors have sought to emulate Kubrick's work in their own films, and those things are still coming out today. I think two great examples are Kim Kardashian's Santa Baby video and also the film on Netflix White Noise starring Adam Driver. Now, these things seek to tell you a message subliminally, but the foreground, the actual content that is the delivery vehicle for this message, is like kind of nonsensical. It's not really like, say, I mean, not necessarily the case with The Shining or Kubrick films, but certainly the case with the film White Noise, which I think even the title is meant to tell you, like, hey, this is white noise. Right. It's really what's going on in the background that you should be paying attention to. And the same thing with Kim Kardashian's Santa Baby. On its surface, it doesn't even make any sense. She's just crawling through a hotel party. But all the symbols in the background are telling a different story. So is that what you're saying here, William, that even the book The Catcher in the Rye, because it's like I can, just based off of what you're saying, detect that there's no cohesion, there's no like, a logical through line through this book. It seems like a lot of it would leave you confused.
I think one of the most alarming things you're saying about this is that I've definitely read this book and I don't remember a word of it.
Yeah, no, it's very odd. It's like he's bouncing around. So like his psychological state, he gets on the phone and just calls somebody. So he calls Luce, then he calls Antolini, then he calls this guy and just goes and says that. And then, has his own kind of internal narrative going on. It is really an odd book. I'm trying to find the quote where the guy Antolini says about like he's doomed for like a great act of violence. But he says, this is Antolini, "You are a very, very strange boy." Holden Caulfield responds, "I know it," I said. So like he's aware that this isn't like a character. If you read this, you'll be like, this isn't like amazing. There's all kinds of psychoanalysis in this too.
Does he then go on to take part in a great act of violence?
Well, that's what I'm saying. At the very end, his sister's no longer in the picture, and he's been walking around having violent thoughts. So I think that there's no overt statement that something went wrong, but it's like, did something go wrong? Like he's clearly in a mental institution. He's in like it's a long wing and stuff like that. So there might be, you can deduce that maybe something really did go wrong, right? Because the parents aren't there and the sister isn't.
How does this plug into hypnotism?
Well, we'll see that. I mean, I think if we get to the slides, we can go through and this is like the standard book cover, right? So Catcher in the Rye, red with the yellow, 60 million copies sold worldwide. And if you go to the next one, I think I can probably do it. This is the cover. So this is referencing the red, Central Park, in the carousel, right, where he's happiest to see Phoebe, who just kills him. He always says this, she kills me. Like, it's a very strange word that they use. Like, instead of like, I just think she's the cutest kid in the world, or like her dimples make me happy, or something like that. Instead, it's like, Phoebe's killing me. She just kills me. It's so strange. Like, the word usage is way too sophisticated.
Dude,
Like,
the more we
Salinger
look
may
at
have been
this-
just a total genius. The other thing about Salinger is that he became a shut-in. He became a recluse and never achieved something like this ever again. So he had Franny and Zoe, I think, was another one, and some short stories.
Yeah,
But
did any of his previous works have this same impact? Because
no.
if not, this would seem like a departure then from his previous works. And then the question is, how did he learn to write this way, or what inspired him to write this way where he wasn't doing that before?
Yeah, 32. And he had like, this is well known. You can see it online. He was, when he was in his 30s, he had a kind of a relationship with a 14-year-old girl, and she talks about it. And for a long term, like years, like very long term. So that's a bit disturbing too.
And then he's going in and he's writing this thing that, I mean, so in that way, we are gearing the works of a pedophile towards the American children in the public education system.
I think to a certain extent, yes, I think that's correct. And there's certain things about this relationship between, like, I've done a lot of shows on human trafficking, pedophilia, and all these other things. A lot of pedophiles in their mind, they're not harming the kids. Like, there's no harm to them. And also, kids are old enough, they're always of consent, like they're old enough to process, like they're mature enough, right? That's like the pedophile's excuse. And then you read this book and it's like, Phoebe's smarter than Holden. She knows Robert Burns. She can quote the poem. How does a kid know that? She dances like an adult with him. She responds to him like an adult. They're almost in a kind of odd relationship because he's saying, I'm leaving, I'm going to go west. And she packs up her luggage to go with him like an adult. Like, what 10-year-old kid would leave their parents to go like that? But the way that it's played out in the narrative, to me, has a real quasi-pedo. Like, he pinches her derriere. He pinches her butt too. Like, at one point, which, maybe in those days isn't that bad, but
it just seems like if there was a horror element to this storytelling, that this would be akin to like a Stephen King situation, because Stephen King also does that, right? Where it's like, famously in It, didn't make the cut in the films, but he's depicting basically an orgy involving children. And
in what movie?
Oh yeah, in the book, in the second book, at the end.
Really?
No, as a matter of fact, it's the first book. This is in the first book. I'm sorry. Yeah, when they're children, they to defeat the clown Pennywise, they have sex with the girl. I forget. I think her name is Sarah. They all have they basically run a train on her. All the boys,
Wow,
this
I
group
didn't
of
know
boys. Yeah, and it's like, I don't know what he's trying to say. Like, he tried to say that it's like to remove, they had to remove their innocence in order to battle this clown, and it goes away for some time. And then the second book picks up where they're adults and they have to fight it again. But something interesting about that book, It, as well, and the book The Stand, and Needful Things, and Storm of the Century from Stephen King, all these books also reference the entity Legion, specifically Pennywise.
Wow.
Yeah, Pennywise.
So that's in this book too. Legion is in this book.
That's why I'm thinking about it. So you have these ideas of pedophilia. This is the idea of Legion, and obviously Stephen King has gleaned a lot from The Catcher in the Rye, because those themes come up. And then I'm sure we'll get to The Shining, which is that's a Stephen King book, but a Kubrick film that really points right at this book as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So this book has permeated our culture in ways that we may not fully understand. It's very strange. This is another one. This is like when he, like at the end, Mr. Andolini tries to hit on Holden. It's like, the elevator was finally there. I got in and went down. Boy, I was shaking like a madman. So there's the madman again. I was sweating too. When something perverty like this happens, I start sweating like a bastard. That kind of stuff's happened to me about 20 times since I was a kid. I can't stand it.
So there's these elements across both these books, It and then this one, where it's like there's something about childhood there's something about the there's like a, I don't want to say a magic associated with it, but there's an age that, you know, a child becomes where, like, I don't know, it's almost like reality and your own mind become a little bit more malleable, or maybe it's like your consciousness has reached such a level where your logical mind is kicking in, so you can sort of analyze maybe what's been happening to you probably your entire life as a child, because they say like children are on the edge of sort of that spiritual realm still, where they can kind of perceive things, and I think that these occultists, same ones who are writing these books and developing these films in Hollywood, they're depicting that in a very strange way. I don't know what it is. It's the psyche of a developing child is full of holes. It's like riddled with inconsistencies, and I don't know. They perceive things in a very strange way, and I think it is like this. Some people would say, like, yeah, you can still sort of see these things. Like, magic is real when you're a child, and that element, I think, is what these authors are playing off of. But I don't think it's just playing off of, and I think that's clear because this thing ends up going into MK Ultra and hypnosis and all these other things. So there's something there we're not aware of, but they are.
Yes, I think so. I think that this is really the time. This book came out at the time. MK Ultra was 53, right? So Dulles had this kind of famous speech called Brain Warfare, and then a week later, MK Ultra 53. But before that, there was a guy at the head of this whole process of kind of mind control. His name was Morse Allen. He was working around, after OSS. So this, and then also Blackbird and Artichoke are taking place before MK Ultra gets started. So this book suddenly pops out right around that time. It's very eerie, and they're involved in the culture, the 50s and the Cold War, and all this stuff is real. And these guys are all Cold Warriors. They are all post World War II guys. They're fighting whatever, and they're also interested in these Manchurian candidates. That's where the word comes from, is Manchukuo or North Korea or whatever. So this book comes out at that time. It's very odd. It's just very, and then there's more research to be done, but just these themes that I would never have keyed into the Stephen King stuff. But
well, it's interesting too, because in elementary school, one of the things that's really fascinating in the conspiracy community is the Gates program, right? The Gifted and Talented program, and allegedly, its nature is still out, I guess, as far as the verdict. But a lot of people speculate that it was a selection process for children with psychic abilities. And so, I mean, whatever the hell public schooling is, on the surface, it's one thing, but it seeks to indoctrinate through things like a Catcher in the Rye, but it also, and of course, just sort of the idea that it arose out of the Industrial Revolution to make good factory workers, right, which is where they got the Bell system and things like that, so that you would be effective on a production line when you were older. But then to have also this element where there's organizations coming in and conducting selection processes on young children to see whether or not they have some sort of innate ability. I don't know what it is. We're giving our children up to a system that picks and chooses them like, I don't know, cattle on a production line for the most promising ones. And these are some of the tools they're using to do that.
Yeah, there's selection processes out there. For also, you make an interesting thing, like the kids, when you're growing up, it's interesting. There's not too many older kind of MK Ultra people because of just the way that the human mind works, which you're taking in information as an adult. As you get to adulthood, and then in adulthood, you're kind of processing what you've learned or reformatting, but you're much more suggestible as a teenager. It's just the way it is because you're learning, you're trying to adapt to the external stimuli and learn and try to figure stuff out. So a lot of these guys who you'll see in this are all about 23, 24, strangely. Sirhan, Tinkley, Oswald, Chapman, all around the same age. Mangione. So I think that something profound is happening, at least to the controllers, to the people who aren't the world controllers or people who are, running stuff. They're looking at humanity as kind of petri dish or a pool of talent for people to use, like people they'll bring in. And you'll see that amongst the elite, like the Rockefellers or find guys like John McClone, or was it McClure, who was a family friend, but they brought him in and groomed him. And he was basically kind of like one of their go-to guys for a lot of their policies and stuff like that. But
it's worth mentioning too that schizophrenia develops between 15 and 25 in men. And this, I'm just looking for this connection because this is obviously a psychological operation. These people, Manchurian candidates, like you mentioned before, or whatever process they're going through. Luigi is a normal functioning dude.
Super high functioning, I would say.
Yeah, high functioning dude up until a certain age. And then all of a sudden by 25, 26, they manage to break him, or something manages to break him entirely. And he's now displaying a totally different behavioral set. It's very strange that happens.
Super suspicious.
Yes, very suspicious.
Here's Andolini talking to Holden again. He said, "This fall I think you're writing for, it's a special kind of fall, a horrible kind. The man falling isn't permitted to feel or hear himself hit bottom. He just keeps falling and falling." Like, these are the suggestions that are in this book. Like, it permeates the whole book of these like psychological states that can't be remedied and things like that. I mean, and then this is the guy who's going to try to, pedophile, lay out the.
Well, why don't we get into some of these slides so we can see how this thing tracks?
Let's do it. So this is a cover of the book. This is the original cover. Now, at first glance, it just looks probably benign. But if you read the book, he's a chain smoker. That's a murder hat. That's the human hunting hat that he's wearing. Red, just like the cover, right? Just like the carousel. So you see the thematic blood and murder associated with color. And then the ducks, where he's schizophrenic. He doesn't understand where the ducks go, right? That's a key component of this whole thing. And in addition to the Catcher in the Rye, it's the component where he can't ascertain reality. Like, people know the ducks fly south for the winter when they're 8, right? And this is kind of like, it's interesting. The quote at the bottom mentions David Copperfield. So that's the Dickens book. So they're telling the reader who may know Dickens that this is kind of like his coming of age story. And it kind of becomes your coming of age because you're with him in his brain. And then at the end, he says, "I don't know why I'm telling you this." So you've kind of been along with him. So if you can go to the next one. Maybe
what's funny too? You talk about coming of age, and you're coming of age too. If schizophrenia truly does develop between the ages of 15 and 25, then they're right at the beginning of that transitional period, giving you this in public schools.
Yeah.
No, super nefarious.
Mm-hmm.
It gets like, that's the whole thing, is like, it didn't expose itself to me, but through further analysis and reading, it's like, wow, this is really dark. It's really like a really dark book for these young kids. They shouldn't be exposed to this. They used to have like the Romans would give Pliny's lives, like famous people, or George Washington. Like, something happened after World War II where like the U.S. empire slid through culture, like this negative culture creation and all the stuff people who the CIA started in 1947. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that this was a socially engineered. And we can do a full show on CIA Hollywood connections. There's so many up to the present, but there were a lot back in the 50s. There was this guy, his name was Tracy Barnes. He was kind of like a lower level apparatchik at the CIA, but he was involved in getting Orwell's Animal Farm made and distributed through Hollywood. But he was kind of the secret lever puller to get that. So it was kind of an anti-communist, tract.
A lot of people speculate that after World War II, during Operation Paperclip, that some of the Nazis that we would have scooped up would have been those from the propaganda wing of the Nazi regime, because they were so masterful at it. And then it's seemingly right on cue, right? A lot of these programs start right after that. Do you think there's a correlation there?
I think so. I think a lot of those Nazis knew that stuff. If you look back, if you remember, there was the burning of the Reichstag. That was kind of what brought Hitler to power. I think that was 1933. It's a huge event, right? They blamed it on the communists. and they brought out this guy Vanderlub, and everybody says he's either retarded or he's in a trance or he's not responding right. But some people have looked at that guy. He's a very smart guy. This guy's doctors here, and they're like, somebody did a mind control job on that dude. So the Nazis knew that in the 30s. And a lot of the stuff, a lot of the earlier writers, I'm just putting this in a time frame. Esterbrook was writing his books on hypnotism in the 30s as well. And he's really the core. And you'll see, I don't know how McGowan keyed into this and Programmed to Kill, but he starts out with a thing on Esterbrook's. Like, he knew that this is the right guy to start with. You don't start with MK Ultra in 53. You start with Esterbrook's in the 30s, where they're talking about split brain and couriers. And Esterbrook's had this famous warning. He said, people need to, hypnotism is so dangerous that they have to either ban it or control it because it can change world history. He was right.
Yeah, now it seems they've incorporated it into the propaganda machine. I would imagine that there's not a successful show for children or otherwise that doesn't have an element of hypnotism in it, right? We talked about on this show how there's like a 8-second frame switch for children's entertainment. Yeah, it's actually really short now.
I mean,
they say for, like hypnotism or you and Cameron or whatever, you put people into like a place where it's, you're isolated and, you're not supposed to have outside interview, and then you put them in stimulation. And I encourage you and your listeners, if you live in a suburban area, just go for a walk at night at about 8:30 and walk. You don't have to just stay on the sidewalk, but just watch everybody's blinking lights in their rooms and go back through.
Yeah.
If you have a kind of paranoid brain like me, you'll know they're getting their evening programming.
Yeah.
Like, I don't go that. Hey, I don't watch TV. Like, I'm freaked out by that. Like, you sit me down. No, I don't even want to even go there.
Well, that's the joke,
that's how
right?
scared I am.
They used to have a CIA agent on payroll that would, kidnap a John from a whorehouse or whatever, strap their eyes open, Clockwork Orange style, and then subject them to like some sort of dosage and some sort of propaganda in order to brainwash them. That was like that's what we're comfortable with. Now it's different. Now we're like free range MK Ultra victims, where we're on a low dose of anxiety inducing medication. Yeah, at all times we're always high or some shit because of the weed industry, and it's like it's driving our baseline anxiety up. It's making us open to suggestibility, and then we're just willingly sitting down and inundating ourselves with hours and hours of MK Ultra content. Like, yeah,
they call it programming for a reason. It's like the dual purpose type stuff that you have to really be afraid of. So,
I was telling you this in the pre-show. So all of these things that we're talking about are very Kubrick-esque, where they'll do these things that don't make sense, inconsistencies all over the place, and I don't know, a very smart person might say, wow, these are really stupid mistakes. But someone like us will look at it and say, no, this is meant to disorient. And my children's show that my kids watch, they were running through YouTube, and there's a guy on YouTube who dissects it. This is how I saw this. He dissected the Bluey show. It's just a kid's show on Disney or wherever you can find it. And he's an animator, so he finds all the inconsistencies in it. And they're just riddled with them. But as an animator myself and someone who does graphic design, I know that it would take... You would have to go through painstaking detail to make these mistakes. You'd have to actually redraw this entire set. It just doesn't happen. It's not a glitch. So these people are doing these inconsistencies to children. So this is no longer starting in junior high school where we're reading a quite dense book. This is on the children's shows. It's at every single level. So the programming begins super early. Someone just mentioned Baby Shark in the chat. That's one of them as well. It's like a weird hypnosis loop that kids go through, and
even just on a instrumental level, right? Music wise, that do it's like designed to be this enclosed loop that gets stuck in your head in such a way that I mean, I don't know.
Transformation. It's not a joke. And that's what ties into this book. They're using these trance and split brain. How does Salinger know all this stuff? He's obviously intelligent, but like the narrative is, like I said earlier, it's just to include all these other themes in here that are so potent and dark. So it goes all the way to the present culture, obviously through Bluey and shark, whatever show. All
Fucking
that stuff.
Bluey. It's incredible.
But anyway, 65 million copies sold worldwide. Like, that's an incredible event. And if you see how culture creation goes, or the Mighty Wurlitz, or they can promote these books and get them into the public consciousness. So if you have, the CIA has assets in the media or something like that, and like, oh, this is the greatest book ever written, everybody get it, and it's such a masterpiece, and get it into the schools. Like, wow. 65 million copies is crazy. So there's Salinger. That's what he looked like. Holden Caulfield's Goddamn War. So I think, there's a lot of historical stuff about Salinger. That's him. 77, weird numerology, but this is him landing, I think, at or somewhere in Normandy. But this is the picture of Mark David Chapman, the alleged killer of Lenin. This is
he looks like a school shooter.
Weird faces, right? Weird still face, like like expressionless. I would say
something about his eyes. That's it could just be because I have a bias. I know what he did, but it looks a little dead behind the eyes.
December 8th, 1980, I think is the date of Lenin, and then the same kind of weird expression on Hinckley, right?
Yeah, same thing with the eyes. It's
same eyes, same pointing to the head.
It's like emotionless.
And then we can go into, so Hinckley's obsession was Catcher in the Rye, but also Taxi Driver, right? And his obsession was with Jodie Foster, 12 years old, a Taxi Driver. So she's kind of the sit-in for Phoebe, who's 10. Phoebe from Catcher in the Rye. Travis Bickle is kind of like another famous anti-hero, right? Travis Bickle of Taxi Driver, very influential film. I think it won best movie Oscar, or maybe best screenplay. But Bickle is kind of the anti-hero. He's stalking another politician, and Hinckley does the same thing. So 3 months later, he supposedly takes a shot at Reagan, right? But he has this kind of like obsession, like Holden Caulfield has with Phoebe. He has with another 12-year-old. And actually,
it's interesting to mention, by the way, that for whatever reason in Taxi, right, Jodie Foster, she's incredibly young, and they're sexualizing her again. So
no question,
there's these themes.
I think she got traumatized by it. I think that there's more to that story. It's pedophilia. So I mean, plain simple. Right. I don't know what you call it, but anyway, Bickle, the character, is based upon a real person who tried to kill George Wallace. His name was Arthur Bremer. And so there's questions about Bremer too, much like Chapman and Hinckley. But it's like a fiction becomes reality, right? It's much like maybe Catcher in the Rye. There's Hinckley's out, same kind of weird kind of strange expression, So this is the date that it happened, March 30th, 81. Just as Reagan becomes president, right? I don't think he was inaugurated January 20th, 81. So 2 months later. Who's the beneficiary if Reagan dies? George H.W. Bush, right? Vice president becomes president. Done a lot of work on George H.W. Bush. Interesting guy. He will come up later in these slides. This is recent. Like, you can't write this stuff.
Is that real? People are asking him to assassinate Donald Trump? That's
hilarious.
Yes, on TMZ. It's darkly amusing. For people who can't see this for audio, it's John Hinckley Jr., the attempted assassin who shot President Ronald Reagan in the 80s, is now getting a barrage of heinous requests online asking him to do the same to President-elect.
Is he out? Is he free?
Yes. This is his, this is Jodie Foster, a picture I found. That's her sister who was her stand-in, but on set 1975, so 5 years.
Got her in this tiny little outfit in Taxi Driver. It's these films and these pieces of entertainment that walk that line where they're like the character is admiring children and then somehow they're indulging it in text or whatever, and you're reading through this, and somehow, to Top's point, saying he read Catcher in the Rye in school and doesn't remember any of it. It's like these themes. They go. It's like when you find a song from like an 80s hair metal group that's all about a little girl, and like generations of people, jammed out to it, and it's only now we're like, wait a second, what did he say? Is he talking about a little girl? What? How the hell did that enter the culture and then not get identified for generations?
Right. That's another disturbing aspect of Catcher in the Rye is the pedophilia. It's real. And it's kind of like being brought in. So like even it's kind of like the suggestion like, hey, you weren't thinking about killing yourself or you weren't thinking about going and getting some more weed, would you? Like you can ask that question, but it puts it into your brain, right? So this same kind of thing, it's putting it into your consciousness. It's intentional. There's no question about it. And that's kind of the danger of Catcher in the Rye. And I do think Catcher in the Rye is a key component of post-war American mind control. I think the book is absolutely has to be a critically analyzed component of everything that happened with these mind control assassins and MK Ultra and all that stuff. I don't think it's external from that. It's part of it. There's no question in my mind. I don't know the totality of it, but it's too profound. There's Bickle, shaved head, Robert De Niro, We Are the People. But this is interesting. So this is kind of a book about Hinckley's, but him. This is what we're going to see about Chapman. He's suicidal. He thinks about killing himself. This is like the same kind of programming as Holden Caulfield, right? But true to form, he tries to commit suicide. John Hinckley will fail. He will wake up nauseated but alive, vowing to find some new way to impress Jodie Foster. If that's not going to work, he's going to kill somebody else. This is from the President Has Been Shot book. But get this. Hinckley identified with Travis and began to act like him after he had seen the film 15 times. He bought the same clothes, ate the same foods, drank the same liquors, and invented a girlfriend just as had Bickle. In August of 1979, he bought a .38 caliber pistol. He bought a rifle. And there's sequences in Taxi Driver, if you remember, where he's buying guns. Remember that? I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen Taxi Driver?
Yeah.
A long time ago, yeah.
They're like in a hotel buying guns. So he literally is becoming Bickle. You know, that's what's really incredible. So like he's identified and wants to become Bickle. And we'll see the same thing with Chapman. So this is Bardo. This is a scary looking guy.
Yeah.
If you ever see eyes like that, like run for your life. This is 89. He killed this girl, Schaefer. He was 19 supposedly, and she's 21. But this is the Los Angeles Times about Bardo. He sent 2 years of like innocuous letters to her as typical fan letters, and then all of a sudden, a very recent letter, Bardo's obsession turned ominous, authorities said. And then it goes, witnesses said they had seen Schaefer's assailant fleeing the scene in a yellow shirt, jeans, and floppy sandals. Yellow, just like the color of Catcher in the Rye. Weird, huh? When Bardo was arrested in Tucson, he was wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and sandals. A red paperback copy of The Catcher in the Rye was found on the roof of the Beverly Palms Rehabilitation Center on Beverly Boulevard. Bardo, indicated he threw a red covered paperback book entitled The Catcher in the Rye in the alley while he was running. The discovery of the book harked back to the 1981 shooting of it's 1980, they got their numbers wrong. 1981 shooting of former Beatle John Lennon by one-time mental patient Mark David Chapman in New York City. After the obsessed fan shot the rock singer, he calmly took out a copy of the J.D. Salinger novel and was reading it. What does it say?
And when police
Reading
arrived.
when police arrived. Sorry.
I wonder what part he's reading.
Right.
But these happen so close to each other. I was doing some research on newspapers, and here are two stories right back to each other about Hinckley and Chapman together. So he reads Catcher in the Rye passage in court. We'll get to that. So you see picture of Hinckley at the top, Chapman at the bottom. Both have MK Ultra doctors. We'll get to that. I mean, I don't know how much time we got. Maybe this is a two-parter, but
we got time. This kind of thing, by the way, even if it's not a well-written book, if you have a famous assassin reading it, you know that's going to do real numbers for the sales immediately afterwards.
Yeah, but in public schools?
Well, that's what's crazy too. You would think that given the fact that this is associated with an assassination, that you'd go probably not a good book for children because the assassin.
Right. The correlation, right? Like, hey, the assassins are reading this. Why should we put it out in public?
Right. Unless, of course, that was.
Well, the correlation Yeah, the correlation is assassins are reading this, continue to put it out in public.
Let's make some more assassins, right?
It's working. Yeah.
Yeah, it's working. We found our subjects.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. Hinckley underwent more than 3 months of testing at the Federal Correctional Center at Butner, North Carolina, by defense and government psychiatrists. Like that should scare it. At Quantico, Virginia. There he is on the left. This is Robert Bardo. Obsessed fan Robert Bardo carried The Catcher in the Rye because his assassin's kit. In his assassin's kit, so it was part of his kit, to kill actress Rebecca Schaeffer because of John Lennon's killer carried the same book. That's Park Elliott Dietz, who's a pretty famous psychiatrist. Bardo identified closely with Mark David Chapman, Lennon's assassin, and knew that Chapman had the J.D. Salinger book about a young man's alienation with him when he shot Lennon. It's not about alienation, guys. This is like so superficial, man.
It feels like people will almost. I don't think we can put. We can overlook how much influence an assassin will have on a disenfranchised youth. I think we still see that today. That's why you get copycat shooters whenever it comes to school shootings. And
didn't Mangione have some kind of like following, and people admired him for killing the head of the
people
still does.
Like fell in love with him after the fact. So yeah, that you create a cultural craze amongst young, short-sighted people. I've heard it argued, I think, on this show by a guest that it kind of connects to what you're saying here about the book. Some of the more recent shootings were used to popularize SSRIs. That was actually the real goal, not just like gun laws or whatever, kind of a removal of your freedoms, but it is a way, even though it sounds counterintuitive, to ingrain the population more and more with SSRIs and neurological related pharmaceuticals. In the same way, it almost seems like they're like using these things to popularize and push this book, get it into pop culture, get it into the hands of the disenfranchised youth, that sort of a thing.
Yeah. His brain was split, according to Dietz, this guy, Bardo. He alternated between seeing Schaefer as all evil or all good, but not aware of the shift in his emotions, much like Holden Caulfield. How did they know all that stuff to get this kind of psychological state into Holden Caulfield in 1951? But he's smart enough to hire detectives to track her down in LA, which is interesting. So you got to wonder like how detached from reality he really was. Just another kind of article where they mentioned Chapman and Hinckley at the same time. So these are happening. Accused killer had copy of Catcher. That's Bardo. So those are the 3-1. This is an article, how the Catcher in the Rise linked to JFK, John Lennon, and Rebecca Schaeffer. JFK. There's a rumor, I haven't really verified it, but Oswald had a copy of Catcher in the Rye as well in his library. And that JFK and Reagan were both admirers of the book, Catcher in the Rye. And you'll see some real philanthropaths and psychopaths like Catcher in the Rye, and it makes you kind of wonder, when you know this information, why they like the book, right?
William, do you think it's a well-done book?
There you go.
I think it's incredibly profound and smart, and so well done. I would say like there's things in there that are too sophisticated for me to like believe that. I mean, it just brings up the question, like, did this guy really write this, or was he a front guy? Because there's so many I know he was in a psych ward, so maybe he's familiar with kind of psychological states, but there's something about this that's different than just like going in like the bell jar where you're talking about like being depressed. There's something about this that's like malevolent and negative and nihilistic that makes me think something else is going on, like they're really trying to change the culture.
I think the question is like, for it to pervade the culture. So the question you're asking here is like, would it be a natural phenomenon? I don't think so. Because like in the same way, Taylor Swift is not a natural phenomenon. Right. Like I can look at her and I can say, yes, I can understand why this is like catchy, but I can't understand why it's catchy to the level that it is. You know what I mean?
Right,
is an
yeah, but
external hand.
all those artists aren't natural phenomena. They're all just performers. Somebody else is writing their music and doing all the producing. They just show up and sing, you know. So
Right.
I've heard the same thing about what's I got friends in low places. What's that guy's name again? They
Garth
did that.
Brooks.
Garth Brooks, yeah, it's apparently the same kind of thing where he was a singer, but he's kind of like a culture creation to change country
Hmm.
and make country more poppy and more of like arena type stuff. Like I've heard that. So some of the other country musicians said there was something sketchy about Garth Brooks.
Yeah, I think Tom. What's his name? Tom
Yeah,
Segura. He like blew the roof off of Garth Brooks. He accused him of being a murderer or something, and like it got really weird because he actually might be a murderer.
I don't know. Is that where it ended up? Because I used to listen to their podcast when they were running that joke at its height, and it was just basically the guy's got such a look in his eyes, and he's so unnatural when he does interviews that like
Garth Brooks. Yeah.
they're like he's like a serial killer, and then they just started that rumor, and then I don't know. I guess maybe you're right. Has it gotten to the point now where Garth Brooks actually has some allegations being levied against him?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so ridiculous.
Well, you should read my podcast, like some of the podcasts. My book, I actually have a full chapter on what happened to Riley Strain in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, there we go.
That'd be
Something
interesting.
more to go
Anyway,
into.
this is the picture from. I'm not trying to change the subject, but
No, go please.
This is the Catcher in the Rye red cover. This is all about psychological states and like the kid has the shine, right? So he's kind of special, like Coalfield or whatever. I forgot the kid's name. His interest. What's that? Danny.
Yeah.
In the end, I think that Phoebe is wearing a blue dress too. When he sees her on the carousel, she's wearing a blue dress. So this is maybe they're reading it like they knew it. And this is all about schizophrenia and scatterbrain type stuff. This is the movie. It's either been brought in, but this is conspiracy theory. There's like a sequence in here where let me see if I can bring that up, where he like goes to buy The Catcher in the Rye at a bookstore, just like Chapman does. Let me see if I can bring it up. You should be able to play this. Can you play this video?
Sure. Here we go.
You receipt?
Yeah. Thank you.
Catch in the Rye.
Yeah, it is.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Have you ever read it?
Yeah, I've never read it.
Never?
No, I haven't. I've never read it.
Catch.
I never.
What film is this?
That's conspiracy theory with Mel Gibson.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just strange because I recognize the way you're describing the main character in Catcher in the Rye is having like, bouts of delusion and paranoia and things like that, and then this element, seemingly just based off of that short clip, stays true all the way to this film.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. So this is kind of like this is Joe Atwell's research. He says that there's like a subtext of secret societies in Catcher in the Rye. And this is this last sentence he writes, this is from 2015. It is alleged that Lee Harvey Oswald had a copy in his apartment and that it was one of his favorite books, though this is disputed. So I can't verify that.
I got to check this page out. There's like, look at these tags. Josephus, Ashkenazi.
His kind of claim to fame is that the New Testament's fake and it was created by the Roman Empire as a form of culture creation.
Oh, okay. He's one of these types. Okay.
He's definitely one of those types, and we can talk offline. I know too much. I've known
Some of those
so much
tags
of history.
were LSD, Lucifer, MK
Yeah.
Ultra.
Whenever they're promoting LSD, you got to really sit up in your chair. It was interesting. I did a show with another guy, Hans Uter. Like these other books that came out at the time of Catcher in the Rye, I think are very telling. And it's very interesting that he commented on, because The Catcher in the Rye didn't come out in a vacuum. There was another book about something where they promoted LSD usage, right? I can't remember what it was. And then there was another one that was about kind of a schizo girl. Like, why are people getting exposed to this in high school? So I think that seeing the other books that came out Oswald's connection to the book. That was from chat. No, that was from
So at the same time that our own intelligence agencies developed an interest in these topics. So, I mean, you know,
Exactly.
we maintain on this show that the intelligence agencies are responsible for manufacturing culture here in the West. It's been as far back as the anti-war movement and Laurel Canyon and the Doors and such, but I would argue probably before that, nothing new under the sun, right?
Is the movie the book The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley?
No, I have to go back and get it. I did a show with Hans Uter about this, but it was a woman's book. I'm sorry, I really should have that because I think it's important because Catcher in the Rye didn't come out, like I said, in a vacuum. It wasn't by itself. But this is a quote. This is a people shooting hat. I said, I shoot people in this hat. This is a direct quote from the book.
Straightforward.
And that's his people shooting hat. He's a chain smoker. He's a pyromaniac. He says he's a sex maniac. So this madman maniac words are repeated almost on every page. Think about the psychic driving of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're literally like, so that's the whole thing about, and I've seen misinterpretations of like other public figures, and you kind of wonder like who's writing these books, these critical books about certain things, because they don't understand really what's going on in these books. Like, I mean, the same thing happened when I was researching Crowley 15 years ago. Like, he's a dabbler. He, didn't know much about it. And then you start reading Crowley, this guy's like an encyclopedia of the occult. He's trying to he literally wrote his own encyclopedias, knows everything about the occult, and all these people are calling him a dabbler. Like, that's his whole life. He's literally drinking blood and eating human effluents. And I mean, just like really crazy stuff.
Well, that's what makes me wonder. Sometimes you're going to try to find the connection between like an author who previously didn't write anything of any consequence and then suddenly writes a book that is massively culturally significant and is riddled with elements of hypnosis and MK Ultra and schizophrenia and all this other shit, and then becomes part of this sort of, these big events in the country moving forward.
Yeah.
You try to find the connective tissue, and it's like it's difficult to, but the CIA also has its hands in trying to understand the occult, trying to understand psychic abilities and such. I just wonder if it's of a spiritual nature, because so many times throughout history when somebody makes a great work of art, they attribute it to, it came to me in a dream, the muses gave it to me, yada, yada. So, you would struggle then to find the connection, except for the idea that the intelligence agencies might be in contact with the same spiritual entities that are telling this guy to write this book.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the CIA was founded by guys from Skull and Bones. So,
right.
Like when Truman's there and the NSA Act is being signed, like for the people behind Truman are Skull and Bonesmen. These are all occultists. These are high-level intelligent occultists, the scariest kind, because they're not like caricatures like LeVay. Like, these are people who wear Brooks Brothers suits, like Holden Caulfield, like scions of wealthy families and stuff. Let me read, you want to talk about MK Ultra. Listen to this. This is from page 73. He's like flim-flamming this mother of his buddy, of one of his schoolmates. He doesn't know very well, but he's lying to her. He says he can lie forever. Old Miss Morrow didn't say anything, but boy, you should have seen her. I had her glued to her seat. You take somebody's mother, all they want to hear about is what a hotshot their son is. Then I really started clucking the old crap around. Did he tell you about the elections? I asked her. The class elections? She shook her head. I had her in a trance. Like I really did. What an interesting use of word. If you know this kind of, and we'll see this later, but if you know this, like things like he's manipulated, he's super manipulative in not a good way.
And that's often an aspect of psychopaths and narcissists, right? Is that they're manipulators.
Yeah, total manipulative. Yeah, he doesn't have any redeeming character. If you're a total piece of garbage, he has redeeming. Holden Caulfield has redeeming characteristics. It's very dark when you read it. I would suggest people read this book, and actually, I'd be willing. Send me an email if you think like you found something good, like he's intelligent or something. Maybe that's the case, but like it's dark. This is a story. This is a recent book on the assassination of John Lennon, where this author David Whelan, who I've interviewed, he doesn't even think Chapman shot Lennon, because of the pattern of bullets on Lennon's body. So it's really disturbing. Like he just was in there, and we'll get into that. But this is the book that I'm going to reference. It's The Murder of John Lennon by Fenton Bresler. And we could do some readings on this, keep going. When you come to read in detail about how Mark Chapman behaved after Lennon's murder, you will find a striking parallel between the days as if in a trance-like condition of the two men. Mark remembered more of the actual killing, but otherwise their reactions were also identical. This is between Sirhan, and Chapman. So you see this trance word we just covered, right? This is the tie between Lennon and Sirhan, 68 and 80. There's an odd footnote to all this. The principal medical defense witness for Sirhan was Dr. Bernard Diamond of the University of California, one of America's leading psychiatrists who used hypnosis in his work. 13 years later, he was to be one of the defense psychiatrists for Mark's case. His diagnosis for the two men was the same, paranoid schizophrenia. Yet he seems not to have used hypnosis in either of his two interviews with Mark, although he hypnotized Sirhan on 6 of his 8 visits to great effect. For instance, when Dr. Diamond asked Sirhan where he had concealed his gun while waiting for Kennedy, Sirhan, in his trance, went for the inside of his belt on the left side. And the police at last knew where he'd carried the weapon. So you see this trance. So why is this word trance in this book? Like the terminology is way too sophisticated for Catcher in the Rye. I got to tell you, it's really disturbing. And they see this kind of repeated phraseology right here. Sirhan wrote, yes, yes, yes. Are you crazy? No, no. Well, why are you writing crazy? Practice, practice, practice. Practice for what? Mind control, mind control, mind control was the written reply, right? And then you go back to Catcher in the Rye, page 19. You will, you will, you will. And this whole notion of the will is like the personal will, but it's very important. Like you will do it, like this is the individual guy. This is repeated in page 19 of Catcher in the Rye. This repeated, there's these repetitions that come through here.
Yeah, it's a mantra. And then the trigger word, exactly. Same thing in The Shining, right? Red rum. And then she reads it and he's like, well, now I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, I know, it's bad. So New York, Marcus gave me a list of objects Mark had on him when he took into police custody. It includes Mark's copy of The Catcher in the Rye, key to Norwich room, Bank of Hawaii Visa card. So you see Honolulu, which is where this guy Ruth and Mangione both were in Hawaii. And you can just go on. The second most popular misconception about Mark relates to J.G. Salinger's famous novel, The Catcher in the Rye. The theory is that he had always identified himself with Holden Caulfield, the book's phony-hating 16-year-old hero, ever since he first read Catcher at the same age. Well, that wasn't the case. It's just that he took it on himself leading up to the murders, as it says in this book. And then he writes, after all, this is the book that the amazed New York policeman found him quietly reading outside the Dakota, which was where Rosemary's Baby was filmed, by the way. When he had thrown down, this is right on Central Park, right where the book takes place, right? So Dakota, Central Park. He had thrown down his gun immediately after killing Lennon with the inscription inside the cover written by Mark, to Holden Caulfield from Holden Caulfield. This is my statement. So much like Hinckley, who became Travis Bickle, Chapman becomes Holden Caulfield in his mind. In his prison cell awaiting trial, he maintained, the reason I killed John Lennon was to gain prominence, to promote the reading of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. I'm not saying I'm a messiah or anything like that. If you read the book and you understand my past, you will see that I am indeed the Catcher in the Rye of this generation.
Fascinating. I love that too, where he's basically like, yes, this is a commercial for The Catcher in the Rye.
He's promoting, and he does it in court too. So you'll see this later in court. He says this in jail, but he does it again, and we'll see this.
So according to him, the point is The Catcher in the Rye. That's the entire point.
Precisely.
It's worth mentioning here that Google says the individuals with dissociative identity disorder have the highest hypnotizability of any clinical group, followed by those with post-traumatic stress disorder. And a moment ago, what you were reading there indicated that he perceives himself as somebody else. I don't know
As
what else.
Holden Caulfield. That's what he wrote in his book. He was Holden
Right.
Caulfield.
So I don't know what you would call a identity disorder more than that.
The channeling almost.
Yeah. So if you can, and this gets down into the sort of the MK Ultra thing about traumatizing children in order to be able to program them. It's like at first the trauma needs to happen, and then the programming takes place afterwards. It seems that trauma is a fracturing of identity, and if you can achieve that, and then you have an incredibly malleable candidate.
Indeed. This is from page 139. Mark's life changes. So he goes through this personality change, much like Mangione, right? He was clearly a difficult time for him, and now an ominous new factor came into his life. He became interested in The Catcher in the Rye. We do not know why. We do not know if anyone suggested it to him, and if so, who. Catcher is a book that most people read once in their life in their teens. That is it. Why on earth, seemingly out of the blue, did Mark suddenly get so involved in a book that, like most of his generation of young Americans, he had already read before at school nearly 10 years ago? So is it absolutely too far-fetched to contemplate that there may have been a connection between these two events, Reagan emerging as a front-runner in the election stakes and Mark now picking up Catcher again, with the further coincidence of Lennon striding back in renewed vigor into the hit factory in Manhattan to record his comeback album, Double Fantasy? If Catcher, with an explosive effect on Mark, was indeed the trigger for his programmed mind, serving to put him on alert in case of call, it all does seem to come together with remarkable neatness. This is basically him, this is him kind of going through Catcher in the Rye and all this stuff. I mean, I can read this. The imbalance in the psychological makeup of immature 16-year-old Holden Caulfield exactly suited the temperament of bewildered, unhappy 25-year-old Mark Chapman. Nowhere is this better exemplified than in the passage towards the end of Catcher, when Holden, visiting his beloved younger sister Phoebe's school in an abortive attempt to talk to her, sees the words "F you" written on a wall. Quote, "It drove me damn near crazy. I thought how Phoebe and all the other little kids would see it and how they'd wonder what the hell it meant, and then finally some dirty kid would tell them. I kept wanting to kill whoever had written it. I figured it was some perverty bum that sneaked into school late at night, and then wrote it on the wall. I kept picturing myself catching him at it," so there's the Catcher theme, "catching him at it, and how I'd smash his head upon the stone steps until he was good and goddamn dead and bloody. But I knew, too, I wouldn't have the guts to do it. That made me even more depressed." So this is a theme of violence. Like, this is extreme violence. Smash his head against the wall, dead and bloody. And this catching thing, like he's catching people doing wrong and striking out.
Sounds like somebody who's exposed to some sort of trauma when they were a kid. Apparently, those who have will often grow into adulthood with a very strong sense of desire for justice or righteousness, and it's probably because of the ways that they were done wrong as a child. And that, to me, right there, sounded like fits that bill.
The idea of cowardice as well. It's like this weird admission of, like, I know I'm not brave enough to do it. It's just
right.
Strange to say.
No, it's strange. These correlations are really strange. This is the day of the killing. He's as you walk the 20 blocks up to the Dakota on West 72nd Street, incongruous amid the lightly dressed New Yorkers with his heavy winter gear, he realized he was missing a prop. He had with him his Double Fantasy album, but something was missing. He halted his progress toward Lennon's selected place of execution and dived into a bookshop to emerge with a red paperback copy of Catcher in the Rye. On the title page, he wrote, "To Holden Caulfield from Holden Caulfield." And below that, "This is my statement." And between times, like, all this stuff was happening, he was hanging around in front of the Dakota, and he just would sit down and read Catcher in the Rye. And then when he shot him, he sat down and started reading it again. And then he goes to jail and he's talking about Catcher in the Rye. And then this is his statement from February 1st. He wrote this. Whatever the true explanation, on Sunday, the 1st February, Mark sat down and wrote to the New York Times in ballpoint capitals a statement, which the newspaper printed 8 days later. Seldom could a book that first appeared in paperback 17 years earlier have had such a glowing sales boost. Interesting. Quote, "It is my sincere belief that presenting this written statement will not only stimulate the reading of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, but will also help many to understand what has happened. If you were able to view the actual copy of The Catcher in the Rye that was taken from me on the night of December 8th, you would find in it the handwritten words, 'This is my statement.' Unfortunately, I was unable to continue this stance and have since spoken openly with the police, doctors, and others involved in this case. I now fully realize that this should not have been done, for it removed the emphasis that I wanted to place on the book. My wish is for all of you to someday read The Catcher in the Rye. All of my efforts will now be devoted towards this goal, for this extraordinary book holds many answers. My true hope is that in wanting to find these answers, you will read The Catcher in the Rye. Thank you. Mark David Chapman, The Catcher in the Rye." So crazy.
This is strange because these people are gleaming something like profound from this book. And I'll admit, it does make me wonder, what is it that they determine is so meaningful that it becomes the driving force for, wild decision making, when this book is given to so many public school children. It's not like it's got a short, a small amount of readers. Lots of people have been subjected to the material. Lots of people come away not feeling this way. What on earth is this dude gleaming from this?
Right. What meaning are you gleaning from a nihilistic book that's just full of kind of like violence and perversion? Like, you see these things, like one of the things I would suggest, not just, if you're up for it, read the book, but also the analysis of like literary critics on the book and see how much they miss, how much driving and how violent he is, and the murder cap, and this kind of theme of like sexual repression and the pervasive kind of perverse, like, I would say it lists almost every major sexual perversion, like sadism, masochism, transvestism, voyeurism, prostitution, pedophilia. Like, it's all there.
Which
It's
plugs
totally
directly
crazy
into the occult, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
were talking with you last episode about Aleister Crowley, and he's engaging in sex magic, ritual sex magic. I mean, these things.
The people that would be reviewing this, they would be looking at that as like an artistic rendition of whatever he's saying.
Right.
I think that they're a little bit deluded in their own mind, so it wouldn't necessarily stick out to them as strange.
Well, that's probably true. They probably wouldn't even see the connection between these kind of programmed assassins and the book. So like, they're just looking at it, and some of them might be like Mockingbird assets or something. I don't know.
Right.
So this is the murder happens December 8th. This is Chapman walking into court Monday, 24th of August, 1981. Mark David Chapman, his hair close cropped from the incident when he totally shaved his head, which is very telling, walked into Justice Edwards' court under his usual heavy armed guard. He carried with him a copy of The Catcher in the Rye. He wore dark slacks and light blue t-shirt with no jacket. He could clearly see the bulletproof vest. He had worked it out. Okay, so this is him. He spent several hours listening to other people talking about him. What did he have to say in his own defense? Asked if he had anything to say to the court before sentence was pronounced. Now, this is very interesting because Mark and Sirhan both pled guilty, right? So they didn't have to go to like this whole in-court proceeding, right? So all the evidence presented against them or anything, they didn't have to go through that process because they pled guilty, right? It's very important tool. Asked if he had anything to say in the court before sentence was pronounced, Mark opened his copy of The Catcher in the Rye and read an extract to the hushed part 49. He had worked it out carefully. If you want to check it for yourself, it is to be found on page 173 of the Bantam paperback. Holden Caulfield is talking to his young sister, Phoebe, the only person in the world whom he really loves, about what he wants to be when he grows up. She suggests a lawyer like their father, but Holden dismisses lawyers as phonies. What he wants to be is a catcher in the rye, and he explains what he means in this passage cited by Mark David Chapman on his Day of Judgment. Quote, "Anyway, I keep picturing all these little kids playing some game in this big field of rye and all the thousands of little kids, and nobody is around, nobody big, except me. And I'm standing on the edge of some craggy cliff. What I have to do, I have to catch everybody if they start to go over the cliff. They are running, and they don't look where they are going. I have to come out from somewhere and catch them. That's all I do all day. I just be the catcher in the rye." Does anyone think in court understand what he was saying, least of all the judge? I doubt it. Nothing was going to be permitted to raise these proceedings from the level of humdrum. And then he was pronounced sentences, and then the judge delivers this kind of verdict where he's guilty. But
so he perceives himself as a hero, in many words, but in what actions? What the hell has he done throughout the course of this book where he is that version of the catcher that he's talking about?
Right.
That's
and
strange.
then this is from Hinckley, right? This is about Hinckley. Rawhide was Reagan's Secret Service name. So this book is called Rawhide Down, page 22. 4-day trip was a blur of fast food and brief stops: Las Vegas, Cheyenne, Chicago, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Traveling through Utah, he awoke from a brief nap to find the bus hurtling through a massive snowstorm. He spent much of the trip slouched in a window seat, watching the scenery stream by or reading The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger's novel of teenage angst and alienation. It means much more than that. He identified with the story's main character, Holden Caulfield. But the book was also special to him because he knew that John Lennon's assassin had pulled it from his pocket and leafed through it moments before gunning down the rock and roll icon. Lennon, who had been killed 3.5 months earlier, was Hinckley's favorite musician. Even so, he sometimes felt he identified more with Lincoln's killer than with Lincoln himself. And it's interesting, too, because he had a suitcase. Hinckley did. It held some of his poems and short stories, as well as several of his favorite books. In addition to Catcher in the Rye, Hinckley had brought along a copy of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in a book called Strawberry Fields Forever, John Lennon remembered. And Romeo and Juliet is mentioned in Catcher in the Rye, interestingly enough. So what the hell is this guy doing with all this stuff? And this is George Bush, 1995. There's this marvelous book by Salinger called Catcher in the Rye. Love this guy. One of his favorite. That's a book that inspired him. So Skull and Bonesman, right?
Is that what he says? He says he was inspired by that book?
Yeah.
Wild.
Right there at the bottom.
Yeah.
Wild.
Was there a book that inspired you? One of the historians here in Williamsburg talked about War and Peace. I had to read that in school. It was an inspiring, lengthy treatise. I read it twice. It taught me a lot about life. There was a marvelous book by Salinger called Catcher in the Rye. These books, I think, helped shape my life. To be honest with you, not one book stands out. There's another winner. Get ready for this one.
These are the books that made me the psychopath that I am today. Oh, are you kidding me, dude?
Nope.
Speaking of psychopaths.
Nope. Bill Gates. This is from the mouth himself. Mouth of the man. I read a lot. I don't always choose what's on the bestseller list. Many of the books I read this year actually come out years ago. This is why this post isn't called the best books of 2013. You may notice that there aren't any novels on my list this year. It's not that I don't enjoy fiction. I've read The Catcher in the Rye a bunch of times. It's one of my favorite books ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely fitting.
Right.
These guys are psychos, man.
Who the hell is a fan of this book that's like somebody you'd go, oh, that guy's cool? Like, I'm literally just listing off the worst people ever and, assassins or war criminals.
It's featured in this movie, The Good Girl. One of the main characters is like a Holden Caulfield. But this is kind of interesting too. Jared Leto's chapter 27. So there's 26 chapters in the book. So this book is the 27th chapter. And it's pretty interesting. It quotes directly from Catcher in the Rye and Chapman, how interesting he is.
And by the way, Jared Leto is a guy that emulated Kubrick in his, I would say probably the greatest hit single of his band, 30 Seconds to Mars. The song Kill is an entire homage to the film The Shining.
I had no idea.
Yeah, if you go up and look up The Kill and watch that music video, it's a miniature The Shining.
This is from chapter 27. Not only did Chapman have like a Catcher in the Rye, but he had the Wizard of Oz motif, which is also a known kind of programming book. Wizard of Oz, Frank Oz. Totally occult. This is Hold Valley or something. That's like the interpretation. And this is like the call. I did a search on call. In many cultures, a child born with a call was considered to be lucky or blessed. There's a superstition that such children are protected from drowning or have a special destiny. Various traditions have viewed it as a sign of spiritual or psychic abilities. In some folklore, the call was believed to bestow second sight or the ability to see into the future. So Caulfield, not a mistake. And this is just like this guy Ruth is very suspicious. He literally like lived like where close to where Chapman was on Oahu. A lot of medical buildings and stuff around there. And this is the thing. Serge Slothrop. The NYPD claims to have found the CEO shooters, that's Mangione's backpack near the carousel in Central Park. Exactly where the Catcher in the Rye ends.
Holy shit.
Man.
December 11, 2024.
It becomes, difficult because you're trying to imagine who's weaving a web this broad and this long as far as it's stretching back into history.
Until people who know the inside story, I think. But a lot of these words, they don't have the kind of modern potence like the dirty words that are in here. But there's a lot.
So that's why they can kind of get away with giving it to kids in school because it's not so direct. If it was the 50s, it would have been direct, but not now.
Right. But there's a lot like snowing is lying, Prince, phony, necking is kissing, give her the time is a euphemism, flitty. Like he mentions flitty a lot when he's talking to Luce, Holden does. But critical reviews affirm the novel accurately reflected the teenage colloquial speech of the time. This is interesting because when I was reading this book, kind of like in a paranoid view, I was thinking about the CIA or just intel involved in this. The Cultural Cold War came to mind. This book by Francis Stoner Saunders, highly recommended. Like a lot of the modern art is totally intel created to create, destabilize the system, to move away from beauty, much like this book, right? So this is fits in with the other arts and letters, but the other not visual. This is the literary version of it, right? In my opinion, but it is interesting because they mention this in the Cultural Cold War. They mention J.D. Salinger. And it's basically this thing encounter where they're promoting certain writers, right? Or urging Spender to open the literary pages to a new generation of American writers like Saul Bellow, J.D. Salinger, Truman Capote, or Shirley Ann Brown. So you see that one of these guys who's associated with the CIA is promoting Salinger. So I think there might be more to this story. I haven't done all my research about this, but that's basically it. I think those are all my slides.
Man, it almost leaves you with more questions. Like, what the hell? Where did this book come from? Who got their hand on this guy who previously seemingly wrote nothing of real consequence? And I'm not saying that people can't have a breakthrough project that they're working on, but then to be of such a nature that mirrors the nature of the intelligence agency's interests of the time, that mirrors the interests of the regime that lost World War II only, how many years before that. And then we are rumored to take these people and put them into our institutions. And then to see it as this through line. There's so many other instances or so many other impactful moments in American history is all the way till today.
The crazy
with Luigi Mangione.
The crazy thing about that book is short of my inclination or my reaction to be we should probably just burn this book. Right. Honestly, maybe we should just probably see that it's crazy, not allow it to be read, because the people who it's affecting, there's really no discernible sequence as to how they're affected in this way. But the outcome seems to be pretty standard. Some sort of assassination.
Just assassinating a president.
Yeah, and it's we don't know what chemical imbalance somebody might have that reads this book, resonates with them, and then they go and they act this out.
Well,
but we know that
people have chemical imbalances, right?
Yeah, and
but I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, what if you could hypothetically create a text-based format that if somebody were to read in their own internal dialogue would accelerate some disposition that they have? Right. Because earlier I said that the people that are easiest to hypnotize are those with identity disorders. So if you have somebody that has trauma, and look, all the way till 2025, now we have an industry that works like a well-oiled machine at diagnosing children. So more children now are being diagnosed with identity disorders or trauma-based disorders than ever before. And if there truly is a selection process based off of that, that means there's more candidates than ever before. So if you have this text that could potentially awaken or hijack your psychology, if you have that disposition, shouldn't we stop letting people? Because I know what you're saying, Top. It's like, burn this book. Oh, book burnings are bad. You know, like it's got that connotation, and I'm not one to suppress information. I don't think that that's a good thing. Is this information or is this programming?
Right. Could it be both?
Why not both? The best pieces of entertainment often are, right?
I think this is a piece of kind of like that modern intel culture creation, just like Francis Stoner Saunders wrote about. We'll see. If you want to see Chapman's doctor, you can just pop up this video. It gets pretty disturbing. But
this is Chapman's doctor.
This is actually probably one of the best things on mind control you could ever watch, called Mission Mind Control. But we'll see his doctor. His name is Klein. And he goes through Ewan Cameron, Gittinger, a lot of these other characters. But I think the talk about Klein is really something else. This guy, I've done this is him right here. That's Gittinger, who was involved. Interesting. I don't know if you ever remember the movie JFK by Stone, right? The intro is this girl, I think Laramie was her name or something, chucked out of a car. She was under this guy's care. You cannot write this stuff, man. Like, there's JFK here. Watch this.
Totally impossible. Seem absolutely credible. I would say the answer is yes, but
so they're asking, can you make a mind control person? This is literally the doctor who saw Chapman in the jail.
Oh, come on, really?
Yeah, 1980. Yeah, 1980.
What's his name?
many qualifications
Klein, Kline.
to that.
Dr. Milton Klein, a psychologist, a clinical and experimental hypnotist, and unpaid consultant to the CIA.
The qualifications would be the subject selected to produce the kind of behavior that you wish, the amount of time, the procedures that are utilized, and the motivations of the people who are designing, executing, and administering the procedures. You're asking whether an individual can be, under hypnosis, influenced, coerced, persuaded, shaped to perform an antisocial act, or a destructive act, or an act of violence. My answer would be yes.
Captain Marco, will you be good enough to lend Raymond your pistol, please? Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Ben.
Sure, kid. Shoot Bobby, Raymond. Through the forehead.
Yes, ma'am.
See, this is like the communist backdrop, right? The communist paranoia, the Manchurian.
Yeah.
This is what these guys in the 50s were worried about.
Is this before or after these events? Like, is he getting up there after these events have all taken place and then saying, like, yeah, we can do that? Or is this before it ever happened?
This, I think, my Operation Mind Control was before. So it's I think this was done in 76, around the time.
Wild. So is it just the idea that no one's ever going to find this footage, or no one of consequence will find it?
I don't think anybody knew this stuff. Like, these are kind of, you have to remember, this is before even VHS. So this is just like a one and done show. But somebody was smart enough to save it and keep it in archive.org.
Which is wild, because without it, I mean, this is huge. The guy's like, yeah, we could do this. Of course we can hypnotize a guy.
He explains it right to you.
Typically do. Yeah.
Then he shows up. I mean, we already saw the connection between Sirhan and Chapman through Diamond, right? The same guys. What they're telling the public is snow job. I mean, who knows what they're doing, back there. Literally, Chapman had like 6 major doctors go meet with him after the event.
Wow.
And then he pleads guilty. Like, the thing is he pleads. There's commonalities. He pleads guilty, so there's no trial. It's all said and done.
Right. But I mean, if you were hypnotized to do so.
I mean, imagine, like, this is like the most sinister take imaginable about Catcher in the Rye. It's probably a good time to end, get 2 hours. But this would be the most paranoid, sinister take, is that you write a book as a template to encourage people to commit assassinations, and you seed it through all of your assets all over the country. and you have all these people talk it up like it's like the greatest piece of literature, and the guy's alienated, but really there's a deeper subtext, and then it self-propagates, and so that these assassins, when they're done, they become apostles for the book itself, which is what Chaplin and apparently Hinckley did too. I don't have the reference, but Hinckley, after the shooting, said he recommends this book. So then you have this self-perpetuating blueprint up to the present day. So we don't even know, like,
if you're not somebody with those proclivities, that doesn't resonate with the character in The Catcher in the Rye. When a world famous assassin says, by the way, you should read this book, if you're at all inquisitive, you go like, what's in that book, man?
It's almost like a parasite.
Dude, I was gonna say that. Yes, good call.
There's a parasite that it'll take over a bug or like and it'll just be like a zombified bug, and it'll eat it. It'll eat it as it goes, but this bug will get it to where it needs to go, and then it'll just hop onto the next host.
Yeah,
and continue to do this.
It's an aquatic worm parasite, and it compels the bug to drown itself in a body of water so that it can birth into it because it's aquatic. Yeah,
dude. Yeah, I had to do a psyche cleanse when I read the book as an adult because I'm familiar with a lot of the kind of parapolitical history and secret history of the U.S., which is really the real history. Like the history books are crap, but like I realize how sinister this is. Like it's like that's Salinger. It's like he's a front. It's like it's too strange.
Thank God
you have to read it. Yeah, I mean, I think they really tried to change the culture, and I think Catcher in the Rye is part of it. And it's the dissociation and this kind of de-patterning stuff that they were all investigating is involved in this. Like Catcher, the poem isn't about that. Like Holden isn't. He's schizo.
It's fascinating because I'm so glad that I never read this and I didn't have any ideas. Like literally coming into this, I was a blank slate, and this is incredibly fascinating. I don't know if I should read the book.
I'd recommend it, but I think it's important. I think from a certain perspective, you should read the book because it shows what you're being presented with isn't all the whole story, and maybe that's the kind of inoculation mentally that people need to have. Is like, be careful what people are giving to you, because like this, I didn't have a choice. This was put on some kind of reading. Thank God I didn't like study it when I was 15 or 14 or whatever.
Right.
But like, this will let you know, like some of these people have sinister objectives and they will put really dark stuff into the culture. And so, so maybe that's the inoculation, is like, maybe I shouldn't just watch everything, whatever they're saying is the greatest music and the creation of culture and creation of these people who out there who are influenced. I think I've done shows on the Beatles with Mike Williams, Sage Quay. I used to think the Beatles were just a great band. The whole thing's fake. The Beatles are totally fake. They can't play music. Almost everybody who saw those guys, like, they couldn't drum.
Yeah, I've been trying to tell my wife that the Beatles is a terrible band and actually an intelligence operation.
Yeah, no, they can't. It's unbelievable. That's the whole thing. It's unbelievable about the moon landing at 9/11. It's really unbelievable, but they are fake.
Hey,
the Beatles are fake.
During those few decades, we really got some of the best propaganda. Our propaganda nowadays sucks. I don't know. It's like Sam Smith.
It was
he's
done
gay,
by
he's
geniuses.
Like it was done by geniuses, and we are dealing with the descendants of those geniuses. And much like you have like a rich family who then produces just an unmotivated offspring, we're dealing with unmotivated propagandists who are giving us embarrassing propaganda. I long for the days of old when things were
rich, and like you really can mind it. I have hard time thinking Salinger was the only person involved in this book. I would accept it if that's the truth, but there's so much when you really unpack it. There's so much here that ties into like mind control, and there's other cultural things that like I've done in my past research, kind of like as an investigative journalist. Like I did 7 Days in May, which you wouldn't think if you watched that movie that came out in '62. You just think it was a good spy movie, but it really was part of the whole kill JFK culture. And it was about an overthrow of the government, a coup by the military, which is what happened. And they were trying to seed it in the kind of positive way into the culture, right? But so it's a lot of these things are really, this fiction isn't as fictional as you might think. This is a weird kind of template manuscript. It reminds me of that book I don't know if it's Evil Dead. You remember that really gnarly movie, Evil Dead?
Yeah.
It's like the book, they open it and just horrible things start happening. I'm like,
yeah.
reading for it. It kind of
got,
has
like, a
that
face
feel
on
to
it.
me. And it's kind of weird too, because my take is different than a lot of people. But I really think if you're familiar with kind of mind control and you read this book, I think you'll feel like this book is much more sinister than a topical
you got to be
reading.
careful, because it seems like there's only two types of takes when it comes to the book. Either, you're just writing a review on it and, it's a good book, but whatever, or it's
Honestly,
something profound, and then you go on to assassinate a world leader. And so
I'll read the book.
You have a certain reverence for it.
If this book sets me on the path to, I'm not going to say it, but I was going to say something about Taylor Swift. You know what? Forget it. We're not going to. If anything happens, I have been here in my house to Taylor. If anything happens to Taylor Swift, I had nothing to do with it.
I had nothing to do with it at all. And I do not own a copy of The Catcher in the Rye.
But think of like the sinister kind of propagandists like you're talking about, seeding the culture, and then the direct result is all this crazy stuff that happened.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible.
It's
funny. I think it has to be seen in the context, just like I said earlier, in the context of this whole culture creation or the breakdown. Like the 60s really was a kind of revolution. I mean, if you want to talk about occultism and the birth of the child and Crowley and the Age of Horus and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Maybe this is part of all that stuff. And I've heard that done shows on modern art and how it was just total culture creation. It didn't grow up and come normally. It was supported by intel people.
Yeah. I believe that wholeheartedly.
It's kind of funny too. Like I'll just close my thought with this, but a lot of people today, I guess, like conservatives would be like, keep your kids out of school because they're trying to show them drag queen story hour. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But before they were showing them this shit, it's like, it's never been, as a matter of fact, I'd probably argue that drag queen story hour in some ways might even be less detrimental to a kid's psyche than this book.
I think one of the things about this book is like when you're young, you don't understand this book as much. So I don't know how profound the impact is. But like
you have to wonder about the subconscious mind and what it absorbs.
Well, good point.
And I would say that
maybe that's worse. Yeah, maybe that's worse.
I would say it seems that there is some element of the public school system that is designed to create school shooters. And I think that's true. I think that it doesn't hit everybody, but there's an underlying element to the system that you're going through where if you have a predisposition, maybe if you have an identity dissociative disorder or some sort of childhood trauma that, shows itself on a psychological level, that
dad
you
in the
are
household.
the candidate, the recipient to this, whatever this undercurrent is that flows. There's surface level shit that happens in school, but then there are psychological things that happen. And I think that they're designed to, if you are the right candidate, turn you into a school shooter. Man, that felt heavy.
Yeah, this is a dark episode.
No, it's deep. I think one of the things I was thinking about recently, like in the last couple of weeks, is like we are American citizens. We've grown up in this culture, but we've really been bombarded in different things from different areas through things that are either top secret, above top secret, or things and we're kind of like in, I don't know, an ant farm or something where we just don't have control. So the psychological impact of even that. Like I didn't have control over COVID. Like we just went through it. Like that was intense.
Yeah.
Like the alienation, isolation. You want to talk about mind control and hypnotism. They made you stay home and not talk to anybody. Like this is like the predicates for being suggestible, right? Because you're at home and you're just watching TV, and Fauci, who's really a bioweapons expert, he doesn't know, he's never practiced medicine in a clinical environment, like in a hospital. So I think that these are like these components of this stuff that hopefully it's really a matter of our survival is understanding this stuff, that the moon landing's fake. JFK was murdered by other people in the government, that some of these cultural icons are malevolent. Like this book, read it as an adult. It's terrifying, dude. It's really terrifying. When you think that 65 million copies have been sold.
That's insane.
That's right out of Grok. I did that today.
They're pulling that's all the public school system. They're buying it in mass and they're indoctrinating kids for generations with it. And man,
the total monstrous, mentally ill loser.
You got to ask yourself, why in the hell the public school system is buying so many copies of this, and this is part of everybody's curriculum growing up, and it is such an underwhelming book in one aspect because it's kind of like we talked about. There's no moral conclusion. There's no nice wrap up. It's not good storytelling in that way. And on the other hand, it's a book that's championed by like how many assassins and world leaders. So
and Gates and Bush, like two of the most
you
sinister people on creation. Like, wow.
That like just those what I just said there alone should make you go, what the hell is this, and why is this happening? And I don't know.
And we've seen, like I mentioned earlier, like I haven't done a full, analysis of the tapestry of American culture, but I've looked at certain things, and Kinsey was a liar who promoted a lot of the stuff that kind of is emulated in this book, and was supported by the Rockefeller. Like, they gave him so much money.
That's not
and the
good.
guy was a total pedophile monster connected to Kenneth Anger, and I mean, just lying. And the people still reference the Sexual Life of Male or whatever as a legit book, and it's just non-scientific trash.
That's not the first time that. Who is it?
And it's actually one of the interesting things. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
One of the interesting things about Kinsey and Crowley, believe it or not, you would never put. Well, there are connections because Kinsey went to the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily because he admired Crowley, and he wanted his diaries, and you can see that in Children of the Beast. But their conclusions about sex life is the same. So it's like there's no restraint.
There it is.
So everything's up. Pedophilia, gay, bisexual.
You're just nothing is
do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Yeah, nothing is forbidden, everything is permitted. Yeah, exactly.
So they came to the same conclusions. The fake scientism of Kinsey, who really is used as the start of the whole homosexual movement. Like, it's really incredible. Like, you couldn't write this
Holy
stuff.
Crap,
yeah.
Man.
We have to do a show on Children of the Beast because
yes, we do.
Kinsey influenced a guy who actually played piano at the OTO where Jack Parsons was a member.
Fuck, man.
Oh my God, man.
It's called the Mattachine Society. His name was, I can't remember it right now.
Well, we'll have to run it back and talk about that because that sounds
incredibly
fascinating.
It's unbelievable. But he was like the one of the first. His name was Harry Hay. Look up Harry Hay, and literally on his own bio, he was playing the organ at OTO meetings, Crowley OTO meetings.
Incredible. That's one of the things. So whenever we get into these shows, these conversations always branch off into like a million different directions. It's because they're all connected. They're all connected. And it's like the study of this thing. I don't know what to call the overarching sort of connective tissue, right? Charlie Robinson with the whole like octopus control.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy for it. But it's just the nature of talking about this thing is you end up in its many tentacles and the ways in which it branches out. It's like it never ends. So you've definitely,
right. So I think you could see this book, like you said, the tentacles connections. Maybe it's more close to this whole Kinsey and the Sexual Life of Male. I don't know when that came out, but imagine if they both came out, because it's totally easily disprovable. And the ideas that from that are in this, that half of married men are gay. That's baloney. But that's the suggestion, right?
That's even people have really taken that notion and run with it. That's something that I see people talking about today. It's 2025, and you'll still see people going back and forth about that. And that's obviously something that the LGBT what the hell ever community has strapped on its armor.
Yeah, they have. Mm-hmm. That's why they like the fake stuff of the Kinsey. Wow. So the sexual behavior of the human male was 48. So before this. So like literally the Catcher in the Rye is aping this nonsense that came out from Rockefeller and Kinsey.
Yeah. Only how many years later?
3
years later. That's not even like, that doesn't feel like it's enough time for a dude to study the works and then write the books. It feels like it's all coming out. These ideas permeated culture all at once.
Yeah. It's artificial. Like it's not.
It is artificial. Yeah. It's been injected into it artificially.
There was a good woman. I forgot her name. I think she's passed away, but she really took apart Kinsey. Her name. Ed Opperman interviewed her. I can't remember.
That's a lot of that. A lot of that old psychology too that we go by, like Freud and everything is about like sexual repression. It's like, I don't know. I'm afraid of the dark, and it's like, well, you must want to bang your mom. So that kind of shit is we allowed that to run the narrative for a long time, and now it seems that it doesn't hold up to scrutiny whatsoever. It's very funny.
What's
Youngie,
the
and thank you,
authentic
Jimmy.
gay population? Well, it's probably growing now because of the huge, propaganda. But I think really in the 50s it was very small, like 3 to 5% of population. But then, like Kinsey saying, "Oh, half of the people have a gay experience or whatever," and like without attribution. I can't remember that woman's name. I'll have to find it. Anyway.
Well, now the numbers might be half when you inundate them in public school with shit like this.
Yeah. They programmed kids to find out their sexual orientation like when they're 10 or 12. Like, hey,
now
what's your orientation? It's more of that suggestion thing, right? So like, why even bring it up?
My son is 9, and I had to have this conversation with him because I heard something on a YouTube video where a guy's singing a song, and he's like, "I'm going to tell you all about me, like what's my age, where I grew up, my gender identity," and he goes on to list a bunch of other benign stuff, but that one gender identity stuck out to me, and I said, "You're not watching that channel, you're not listening to that guy," and he's like, "What's wrong with that?" And it's very difficult because it seems on its face inconsequential. So he's going to say, I'm a boy or a girl, and I'm like, you don't need to have him tell you can hear his voice. He's a boy. You shouldn't even be at all speculative about the nature of, are you a boy or are you a girl? You can tell by looking and listening to a person. And but now these things are just part of where it used to be obscure. Maybe you read a book like The Catcher in the Rye. Now they're actually doing gender studies. Now the entertainment is geared that way too. And so fully penetrated the culture.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like we're living through kind of like a wasteland of this kind of past, like still being influenced by it to this day. Like,
but just on a larger scale, because it used to be. It goes back to that analogy that I used of the MK Ultra victim strapped in a chair with his eyeballs peeled open, and he's on LSD and he's being propagandized. Now we are self-administering these drugs, and we're self-propagandizing.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible to detox a culture from this? Because a lot of the policy now, I know, whatever Trump may be or Elon may be, I think it's significant with like USAID going through these news organizations and just defunding them. Like we're seeing, the BBC was given $8 billion to propagandize the people. Reuters was given like $25 million, and it says specifically for social engineering. That's no longer happening. So it's like, okay, we've removed that. Maybe we'll clean up the food source a little bit. Is it possible to rehab a nation, to detox a nation, to get back to some stasis, some sort of level, or has the damage already been done?
Well, I think the damage has been done, but getting back to it is, I think, why people voted for Trump. So hopefully, I don't know if there's really a static culture. You're either rising or falling. So hopefully we can roll back a lot of the stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think acknowledging these things and talking about them is really the first step. I think that's really what's the famous line? Culture is upstream from politics.
Downstream,
No, culture is upstream. Like the culture influences politics, not the other way. Well,
the quote from Breitbart was it was downstream from politics, but I agree. I think it's the opposite.
Okay, well, I don't know what he said, but I'm going to invert it because I think the culture influences politics. So I don't think that RFK would be in power without him being on Joe Rogan and talked about, and all these other Hightower and all these other guys talking about stuff RFK was talking about. And same thing with the Intel and all this other stuff. So that's part of the culture is the conversation, things like that are happening now. Yeah, so I think that exposing all this stuff and putting it in perspective, I think is very worthwhile. Like people say, oh, you're not facilitating change. You're doing too much talking. But if you can know that Kinsey's a bunch of baloney, which he totally is, you read how he died. I don't know if you know that. But it's not somebody you'd want to have teaching you about anything. But if you know that this is baloney, then you're not going to send your kid to public school or have them listen to all that stuff, right? And so then it's just a waste of money. People won't put money into it, and all this stuff will kind of fall down, hopefully. So I think that you can reset the culture.
I wonder if it would take what got us there in the first place, which is a slow propagandizing. I'm open to the idea that you could have the curtain ripped back all at once, but I also recognize that as far as controlling hotter tempers, it would be better for a governing body to expose us to it the same way we got there, which is long and slow.
Yeah.
The frog has already been boiled, so I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Figure out how to make the soup.
I think that if the frog has already been boiled, they are seeking to make a meal out of it, not to reverse propagandize us. I mean, they might make it look like that, but I don't think they worked all these generations to get us to this point just to go, whew, that was a close one.
Yeah, and a good point. I think that they created one of the greatest propaganda events in human history, outdoing the Nazis and the communists, because this USAID shows how the tentacles were in the millions of money. And so all these people were freaking fake. So you could go to Politico or wherever, and they're all being puppeteered. Like, not just like a Wurlitzer with like 100 keys. You're talking about millions.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you have to marvel at it. Like, wow, this is the beast system.
The funniest part about it is that it's George Soros and this shady billionaire. It's like, no, it's actually you, stupid. You're paying for it.
Right.
You paid for your own to eat your own shit.
Yep, no doubt.
Man.
It's
all
not
right,
bad.
Let's bring it in for a landing here, because we've over 2 hours.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a perfect ending. We financed our own tyranny. We financed our own servitude. Slavery.
We've been paying top dollar to chew on our own turds.
Yeah, incredible. William, tell the people again where they can find you. I'm sure you'll be back on again to tell them again where they can find you, but tell them again now.
Yeah, it's William Ramsey Investigates. I have over 1,300 episodes, so you can see on a wide variety of topics, books, and different subjects. I kind of make it so people can find maybe something they're interested in on different subjects. So that's you can find on iTunes, Spotify. And then I have 5 books. You can have signed copies if you want from my website. My Global Death Cult is reselling. I guess somebody's talking about it, or something's going on where people are referencing it. So I wrote that in 2021. My most recent is about SFK. That's the Smiley Face Killers, which does go into what's his name? I got friends in low places. There's a chapter about
Garth
him.
Brooks.
Garth Brooks. Thank you. I can't remember his name. Thank God. And then I have 5 documentaries on my Patreon, which are probably I can tell you they were all micro budgeted, but I think the information is really good. And one of them on Smiley Face Killers is 3.5 hours. So I put a lot of research into that. So I really kind of made my bones kind of just being a researcher. I think it's really true.
Nice. Perfect. Well, again, I hope you see a little bump from our audience. They go over to your show and check your stuff out. And once again, thank you for coming on. I'm going to go walk aimlessly thinking about this child's book that I probably read.
I don't know. Hopefully somebody will read it and say everything you take out of this book is wrong, because I would want to be wrong. But like my reading of like the split brain and the trance and how negative he is and nihilistic, I think it's worse than
No, you're not wrong, man. Yeah. You're not. All right, guys.
All right, guys. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys, don't forget to obey, submit, comply. We'll see you guys later. Peace out. Oh, there we go.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.